Welcome to the United We Scan podcast, the podcast by rural carriers for rural carriers. The views expressed in this podcast are of the presenters and the presenters only and do not represent the views, opinions, or strategies of the United States Postal Service or the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. We ask that you please consult your assigned union representative for guidance in your local area. Please like this podcast, share with your fellow rural carriers, and subscribe to be notified each time a new episode is uploaded. Please leave a comment or question for us below. Thank you. Now, here are the hosts of the United We Scan podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Where are we at? Episode 116. We're going to talk a little bit about the Fight Like Hell rallies that went on across the country today, some legislation that's come about, and whatever else we feel like talking about. So, on that note, how was your week, James?
Pretty normal at the post office. You know, it was very, very light for most of the week. But Monday, missing chunks of my DPS. Thank you, mail handlers. And then Tuesday, I got that mail in my mail and also had 2 box holders to go along with it. And then Wednesday, I had the Val packs come along. So Thursday and Friday was actually nice to have a little bit lighter day, But other than that, Saturday was a easy day. I'm going to end up having to file a grievance because they're splitting multiple routes in my office every week now because of the carrier on emergency placement and the retirement that we had. So now they're splitting the routes every weekend, and I'm getting sick of it. I want to be able to work on my relief day if needed, and so do the carriers on the relief day work list. But apparently, district has told everybody that nobody gets overtime anymore, probably trying to prevent Doge from finding all that overtime that they're paying out and screaming at them. But other than that, went to the rally today, and we'll talk about that during the episode. But that pretty much sums up my week. Ready to get another week underway here. How about you, Bill? How was your week?
Oh, like I said, off air, I'm getting some prompts from individuals who run for our state board and considering it, and a lot of phone calls, a lot of questions and everything in regards to a lot of topics, which sadly, we have repeatedly, addressed time and time again on this podcast. But, people missed it. Don't go back and listen to the podcast with the headers in regards to the topics they're covering. But it was a good week, decent weather. We've got some much needed rain coming in tonight. And, I didn't get a chance to get out to the rallies. We had some things we had to take care of today. But we had a very good showing up in Philadelphia at several locations. Almost 1,000 people at the main post office. So that was nice to see that, that all these people were out there. And, everybody's with the signs out there and T-shirts and everything. I mean, they really had, a great response to this rallies. So I'm glad to see that they got out there, to get their voices heard and put faces to it. Like the one man said, he says, I'm one of the newer carriers. I have my daughter here. I don't know if I'm going to have a job, if I'm going to be able to pay for her, daycare or her food or anything because of this. And like I said to my wife, I said that, this is a bunch of fear mongering, that, get people all worked up in a frenzy, But the problem of it is, if you don't respond like the carriers did today, then guess what? It might just slip through the cracks and become reality. So you have to get, your craft, in your community and your senators and representatives involved in this and let them know how you feel about this so they can prevent it. Other than that, living large, loving grandchildren. And how about you, Kristen? How'd your week go for you?
Oh, it started off okay. And then Ruby, he left Tuesday afternoon to go to academy, which was Wednesday through Saturday for her, so I was then full-time grandma. My week at work wasn't too bad, seemed pretty average. I was off Wednesday because little man had his 6-month doctor's appointment. Thursday and Friday were fairly light. Friday, he did not let me sleep one bit. I worked my K day yesterday on very, very, very little sleep. Was hoping to have an easy day when I walked in, and that quickly went bye-bye and out the door when I saw that I had the 2 tubs of Advos sitting there and 119 parcels. But, yeah, so other than that, Ruby is finished with Academy. She got home about 8 o'clock last night, and let's just say that was the happiest 7-month-old baby I have seen in a long time when Mama walked through the door. And here I was happy too because I could actually get some sleep. Other than that, it wasn't too bad. I mean, we're down 2 regulars right now, so we've got the one H route is being covered by either my sub or the one that I trained most recently when he's not running his route. And the other one is being covered by that brand new RCA assigned to that route. So it's been kind of interesting, but oh no, it wasn't all that bad this week for me, anyways, other than the lack of sleep. But this is a new week, and Ruby starts her on the job training Tuesday, so shall be interesting to see how that goes. That's all I'm gonna say about that at the moment. But I'm pretty sure she'll do all. I, unfortunately, as much as Ruby and I both wanted to go to one of the rallies here in Michigan, unfortunately, we weren't able to do it. Little man, I think he's gotten the daycare crud on top of it. So, brand new daycare starting. It's like when kids go back to school, stuff goes around. And Ruby not getting home until 8 o'clock because she was 4 hours away at Academy. And all the all the rallies to me were 3.5 to 4 hours away. So, unfortunately, it was not feasible for us to go as much as we both really wanted to go. We couldn't do it, but I was definitely there in spirit with everybody, and I just love seeing all the photos that I've been seeing from the rallies across the country. The turnout just looks awesome. The news reports are starting to pick it up. I've noticed from all the local news channels in those areas, and yeah, our voices are starting to get heard.
Get the message out.
Absolutely.
I was lucky to be able to attend the one in Ann Arbor, and that one, of course, was hosted by multiple branches in the Ann Arbor area, and we had about 130 people show up. And I had talked with four other rural carriers that were there, as well as 4 customers of the Postal Service that showed up for the rally. And other people have said they've had customers show up and things like that as well to their rallies. So that is awesome to see that not only are the postal employees showing up, but the very people that we serve were showing up and fighting alongside of us to make sure that the Postal Service remains the vital service that it is.
I love the fact that, Donald Trump is going to sit there saying how much money we're losing. Yeah, we're losing money. He's got to remember we are a service, just like the police department, just like the armed services, just like a fire department. We're we're not there as a profit-making mechanism. We're there to service the country, plain and simple. So, if you want that service, yes, it should be self-sustaining, but how much return do we really get on what you pay your military? Well, you get the security of your mind saying we'll never be attacked, or if we are attacked, we can respond. I mean, I've never had a house fire, but every year I give money to the fire department because of the fact that they need millions to run one firehouse, even with an all volunteer fire station. These are things that you need, and if you don't have those services, you'll be surprised how fast people will realize how important they are. I mean, look at the situations where local police departments can't hire anybody, and they have to rely upon regional or state police to help give them coverage on night times and weekends. Folks, we're not here to make money. We're here to provide a service. Is it required that we make money? Yes, we have expenses. We have costs. We have retirement and medical and payroll and everything else. Fact of the matter is, we are a service. first. It's right in the name.
Exactly. We are there to serve the people. And if management and the Senate, the House don't understand that, and definitely President Trump and Elon Musk don't understand that, we do. We understand what our customers need from us. We understand where the service comes from, and that is the letter carriers on the ground serving the customers, the clerks serving the customers over the counter, the mail handlers moving the mail around in the plants to get them to those offices, the VMF fixing vehicles to get them to the post offices and to serve the post offices with the big trucks, things like that. The people that actually do the work at the post office. Upper management? No, they don't. They don't do anything of super importance to the post office that isn't already being done by a computer. Most upper management is sending out emails, doing reports, things that are automated in most other organizations. But instead, they're automating jobs at the bottom here while maintaining and holding on to theirs, not saving the post office money.
Yet they're the ones that get the raises, and those of us that are getting our hands dirty doing the work don't see crap.
Oh, let's talk about this legislation. Come on, let's get it going, James. Get the legislation going.
All right. So I posted about all the resolutions and bills that have been put forth in Congress yesterday. And I kind of wanted to get you guys in on this conversation because everybody should be in on these conversations. We should know what our legislature is doing and what it's doing to affect us. Now, granted, this isn't an all-encompassing list. I spent 3 hours on Congress.gov putting this together just to get this information. But it's out there. And this is the same as reading out the PO 603 or your ELM. You got to know what's going on so you can stay informed. So the very first one that I want to talk about is House Resolution 70. Now, this is different from the bills that are usually put forth. This is basically a statement from the House expressing their opinion. And it states, it is expressing the sense of the House of Representatives that Congress should take all appropriate measures to ensure that the United States Postal Service remains an independent establishment of the federal government and is not subject to privatization. Now, as of standing, this has 168 co-sponsors to it. 160 Democrats and 8 Republicans. So basically, they just want to make a statement that the House does not believe the Postal Service should be privatized. Your guys' thoughts?
Well, I agree. I mean, that was part of the reason for all these rallies today.
Well, from a business perspective, this would be a ginormous type of undertaking in regards to trying to privatize the post office. And the reason being is because of the fact that as a service, we go into areas where a private entrepreneur does not want to service, the rural Americans. Okay. It's too expensive. That's why we have all the last mile handoffs from UPS and FedEx and DHL and Amazon, because we go those extra miles. And it's a money loser. But the fact of it is that we are the service of record and nobody else that wants to go out there. Now, what are you going to do in regards to giving them equal service, per se, that they are entitled to? Are you going to restrict it to 6 days? Are you going to restrict it to every other day, as we've heard options being discussed? It really is such a big problem for you to turn around and kind of take this monster that the post office is and divvy it up. And then again, once you divvy it up, you now have to regulate the privatization of it, because you're not going to find anybody who's going to buy the post office in its full entity. It's going to be broken up in pieces. So therefore, who's going to regulate how each piece is sold off and how it is regulated in regards to their responsibilities to the public? in regards to service, in regards to accountability, in regards to just privacy, because now you have a public entity running the postal service, and they're not going to be bound by the sanctity of the mail that's required by the United States Postal Service. So where are these rules, regulations, these guidelines all going to be coming together and formulated? And it's not going to be done in a couple months there, President Trump. It would be a years-long type situation, and you're not going to be able to sell every piece of the post office because every piece is not a moneymaker.
We'll actually get into that later. I actually have a document that I found that talks about that. Now, this next one is currently not a threat, but it is out there. It only has a sponsor. It has 0 co-sponsors since being introduced on January 3rd, and that is H.R. 86, the NOSHA Act, to abolish the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. He calls it the Nullify Occupational Safety and Health Administration Act. And the language is specifically just says the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 is repealed. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration is abolished. Now, I seem to recall an email from management going around saying, stop the OSHA retaliation. So it sounds like Representative Andy Biggs from Arizona 5 agrees with management that the retaliation from OSHA needs to stop, so we need to abolish it.
But and you realize OSHA does cover more than just the post office. I mean, that's everybody. That's everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like privatizing the post office. Well, okay, the government's going to get out of it. Well, it's not affecting just our mail customers. It's affecting every business in the country. It's affecting every government office in the country. It's not just, the mail delivery to, Joe Adams at 123 Main Street. It's everybody in the damn country. How the hell are you going to get around that? Let's get rid of OSHA, in regards to the post office. Well, if you get rid of OSHA, you're getting rid of it in regards to every entity in the country, every charity, every business, every service,
every manufacturer.
Yeah, everybody.
I mean, that's the one thing. When I hear the term OSHA, you think more of your manufacturers and stuff like that as well. I mean, that's the one thing that comes to me when I hear the word OSHA. So yeah, that would affect the entire nation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, how would you like, and James would know this from being, in the paramedic field there with firefighters and all. How about the fact that, OSHA doesn't regulate you guys, and, you go in there and you have a multi, alarm fire going off, and since you're not required to be OSHA regulated, half your equipment doesn't work. Half your people aren't trained. I mean, but, this is what OSHA looks for in regards to, that aspect, because the people have to be responsible enough, trained enough, equipment has to be available and functional, to fight fires. If somebody sits there and says, well, we can't do it because we have a bunch of split hoses that froze last week, in a fire that we serviced, and somebody didn't, pump the lines out, guess what? That's okay.
I'm going to have to correct you there, Bill. The fire service is covered under the National Fire Protection Association. OSHA would be involved with everything else, but the firefighting stuff is covered under the National Fire Protection Association.
So you're saying OSHA has no viability over the fire companies?
OSHA does have viability, but when it comes to the firefighting stuff, NFPA standards are usually what the fire departments go by. OSHA would cover like the fire station, vehicles, safety, things like that. But firefighting, you go to a higher standard with NFPA than OSHA.
So a fire truck, which is part of their equipment, would fall under their jurisdiction.
Yes.
Maintaining
and
the
it would
equipment,
also cover that would also
maintaining the
go
buildings.
under the DOT too, the Department of Transportation.
So you have
so many
multiple
agencies would cover that.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but the equipment that we use on a fire scene is NFPA certified.
So if your truck isn't properly serviced and you take your good equipment out there and the truck doesn't work and the door doesn't go up and you crash through the door, that'll fall under OSHA. Hey, look,
Yeah.
I remember Liz Lightfoot out there at Grand Rapids several years ago, driving into a parking lot garage with a car carrier on top, not realizing it said 7-foot clearance. Okay, I'm just
That's
hate to
why we
bring that
have
up on you,
warning.
Liz.
That's why we have warning labels on things now.
Yeah, don't drink battery acid. No.
All
God,
right.
how did we live this long without those warnings? Jeez.
So the next one, this was actually a good one. It doesn't have any co-sponsors right now, but it was introduced by Nick LaLota out of New York One. And it is to require the Postal Service to use a mobile retail unit to provide retail postal services in an area when the post office for such area is temporarily unavailable to provide such services and for other purposes. So I know that we have mobile post offices where they put a clerk in a little van that offers limited postal services in a parking lot. This bill would actually make it required that they do that, and not only that, but even for postal retail facilities that are contracted out that are temporarily unable to provide services. The only exception to that is if the contract with the contractor has expired. Like they're not going to renew the contract with them is the only reason why they wouldn't have to do that with this bill. So think of Hurricane Helene and Milton. In those areas, they would have had to bring a bunch of mobile retail units to those areas that have been affected by those hurricanes, or even the areas with the tornadoes if the post office was damaged.
Or even those that have offices that burn down.
Yep, thank you.
I wasn't just going by bills there, but also I know of an RMPO location in my old office that burned down. Now all those people that had PO boxes there have to drive 20 miles to go get their mail.
Or my office when the person lit the lobby on fire.
I have an alibi for that day.
Well, they got them on camera, so it was all good. But they did provide the mobile retail unit for a little while, and they actually parked it next door at the library for people to go to. But then it just became difficult for them to handle it because all the mail was going to another post office where we were all at, and then the clerk would have to come in to that office, pick it up, and then drive to the mobile truck to hand out the mail. And they kind of got annoyed with that. But
you see, this is where the politics get involved. Westchester burned down, and it happened in August. What was coming up, folks, that would make them put a temporary mobile office there? Well, you had the election. So to make sure that, in this, area that there's a availability of postal services, they put a step van that was in there that had a service window that you could get out and go up to just for the ballots. As soon as the election was over, that van up and disappeared. Why can't you put a temporary office in a tractor trailer and park the trailer on the lot with full services for the people in the area?
I agree.
I mean, they're still fighting about whether to rebuild that post office. And it just doesn't make any sense. You moved 87 routes, 24 miles away. That's 48 miles round trip that everybody's getting paid now, added on their routes. That's why every route became a K route. It didn't affect mine as much because I was already an overburdened K route, but now you had 11 overburdened K routes. You talk about wasting money. How about that, folks? How about putting us back into our office? And yet they turned around and were discussing moving 3 other post offices into a rebuilt Westchester office. And now you would have 3 offices traveling extra mileage to get to their routes. Just doesn't make any damn sense. No, Bart, nobody said they were intelligent. And they are allowed to mismanage.
Yep. All right. The next one I have is HR 491, Equal COLA Act. Now, before anybody jumps on this, this does not touch the Postal Service. It will not touch the Postal Service. But what it does affect is retirees on the Federal Employees Retirement System, on FERS, or the Civil Service Retirement System, because it's under Title V. It's to amend it to achieve parity between the cost of living adjustment with respect to an annuity under the Federal Employees Retirement System and an annuity under the Civil Service Retirement System, that once a year, effective December 1st of each year, each annuity will have an increase by the percentage change in the price index for the base quarter of such year, and up to adjusted in the nearest 0.1% under Section 8462 of Title V USC. So basically, if you're a retiree, they want to make equal COLA adjustments for all retirees on FERS and CSRS.
For that.
I'm for that too. How about you, Kristen? You for it too?
Yep, I am.
All right.
A little extra cheddar on my sandwich? Yeah.
You'll get to be able to buy one more slice of cheese with that increase.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
All right, we'll go on to HR 758, Mail Traffic Deaths Reporting Act. This one is to direct the USPS to issue regulations requiring Postal Service employees and contractors to report to the Postal Service traffic crashes involving vehicles carrying mail that result in injury or death and for other purposes. This is basically, they want to make sure that because Postmaster General Louis DeJoy did not know of traffic accidents and deaths in the Postal Service, they want to make it so that they're all reported and tracked. And this has passed the House with a vote of 402 to 16. It was pretty much almost unanimous in the House. And it's in the Senate now, but that's one that is important because tracking injuries and deaths with accidents in the Postal Service is something that really should be monitored and taken care of, because it's been happening a lot more lately. Your thoughts?
You're not referring to the time when DeJoy was up before the committee who asked him about how many deaths there were, and he didn't know the answer?
They were asking him about Palmetto, but he doesn't even know about traffic.
Yeah. Well, the Palmetto one was the specific question about Palmetto, but they also asked him about how many the U.S. Postal Service suffer every year, and he didn't know that answer either.
Exactly.
He was taking a guess like 9 or 10. I don't know. It's pretty bad when you sit there and you say, I don't know.
Yeah. But in the past 12 months, we've had 12 to 14 rural carrier deaths in the past 12 months.
It's 12 too many. 13 too many.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And they were all on the job. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And let's not also discount how many attacks have been made on postal carriers. Mostly city, but there are attacks on rules too by individuals.
Mm-hmm. HR 765, the Mails Act. There is also Senate 155 that is congruent to this. It is to improve the communications between the USPS and local communities relating to the relocation and establishment of Postal Service retail service facilities and for other purposes. So basically, they want them to talk to local communities before they move, relocate, or even create post offices in communities.
Now, would that also include consolidation into SDCs?
Yes, it does. And so the Postal Service, it says in the bill, it says the Postal Service may not implement a temporary relocation, including for a commemorative event, for a period longer than 2 days without collecting and considering community input under paragraph C of that section. So they don't want the Postal Service to just willy-nilly close and move facilities or bring in new facilities all over the country.
And just as a footnote, nobody from the Board of Governors has gotten back to me in regards to me volunteering to be the Postmaster General.
Next one is
James. It just sounds like they're going to come up with another committee to create more payroll for somebody that they're friends with, to do a study on this or to handle the questioning. It's real simple, folks. We serve the community at large, and if you can prove the viability of that service, then for God's sakes, why are you removing it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, we've had an office in Phoenixville, PA, get relocated to the SDNC. Now, to get back out to Phoenixville, the mileage isn't so bad, but the traffic is, okay? Now, the Phoenixville post office is still there, open and operating. What's the point of driving all these extra mileage? The extra mileage, the extra pay, the extra wear and tear, the extra liability of being on the road longer in these piece of shit vehicles.
To save 2 commercial trucks from going to and from that facility.
Well, I did find out April 1st, they are cutting all of our trucks down to 1 in the morning, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
We will no longer have a dispatch truck in the afternoon starting April 1st.
And that serves 2 purposes, okay? You're going to save some money, okay? And because the Joy changed the time frame and the specifics in regards to the delivery of mail, unless you have expresses, okay, that have to move to make their commitments, that 1 extra day is not going to make a big difference in the time standards already established under the Joy. So I'm not that upset about up in the afternoon. But the fact of the matter is, you still have these facilities that you have to maintain. Mm-hmm. They're still there for as a center for the public. Why are you going through this extra expense of moving the carriers to an SDNC
and spending more money and fuel and wear and tear on the vehicles?
Right. And some of these vehicles are coming up on 50 years old, James. The LLVs are coming up on being 50 years old.
Now you're making me feel old.
Oh, if the shoe fits.
I'm just a little older than the LLVs. All right.
Well, I'm old enough to take my driving test in the LLV.
The next one I have is HR 1249 to require the USPS to post notices of changes that will affect nationwide postal services. The act may be cited as instituting notification formalities on Reorganizing Mail Act, also known as INFORM. And basically, when a proposed change is submitted to the PRC, post a notice of the change within affected storefront postal facilities to remain posted for no fewer than 30 days after the change has gone into effect. Basically, inform the customers what's changing and why.
That reminds me of informing, builders when they're putting up new, developments that you have to use the cluster box units. You can't have curbside mailboxes. This is what we're going to do, and there's nothing you can say about it. And personally, I feel like if you're living in a development that has $600,000 to $700,000 homes, you're just ghettoizing as in the ghettoizing the development because it looks like crap.
Looks like a trailer park.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but there's a newer development off of Lenape Road, and it has all these $800,000 carriage homes. Now, all they are is townhomes that are modified in regards to their roof lines and everything like that, and their back decks are different based on the customers, willy-nillys, what they wanted on the house. But the fact of the matter is, they've got one cluster section there that is six CBUs. Okay, not a lot. Okay, but all the trash that the people basically dump when they get their mailbox, open up their mailboxes, the stuff that's spewing around there. And then you go to the other end of the development and you have another 6 CBUs on the cul-de-sac. And this all sits on top of a hill, so it gets all the nice windage there. And you go up there on a windy day and you just see all the advos blowing around in the cul-de-sac that people have, taken out of the mailbox. It got away from them and they just let it go. So it looks like a ghetto. It really does. Then, I love the first house on the left because he's got little 2-foot high shrubs all around his property, and all the trash and plastic bags and everything just swirls around and ends up against his house. I bet you he gets tired of that shit every day.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't they have curbside cost savings? That's why.
Pay the carriers less.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it's about, is paying the carriers less.
Yep.
Because the post office doesn't pay for the CBU. The post office doesn't pay for curbside boxes. The cost is in the carrier going box to box. That's the cost. So, next one is HR. What?
Of course, James, you could always raise the postal rate again for a first class letter. That makes sense.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
I will be talking about that on the next article I have after I get done with all these resolutions. House HR 1310 to limit the closure or consolidation of any United States Postal Service processing and distribution center. So that would be all your PNDCs, just PNDCs, not the SNDCs. It doesn't include those, just the PNDCs. And the extra part of that is if such action would result in no such center being located in that state. So, for instance, that one actually this is not a good bill with that statement being in there.
No.
Because if you have, let's go with Nevada, since she got into a great argument with the Joy over this. In Nevada, you have a processing center in Reno. You have a processing center in Las Vegas. They could close the Reno facility and not violate this bill because they still have the processing center in Las Vegas.
Conversely, if you have one on the eastern shore of Maryland, okay, and you have one on the eastern shore of Delaware, you have to maintain both of them, even though they're only 14 miles away from each other, because they're not within the state.
Yep, but if there's one on the western side of Maryland, way over by West Virginia,
yep,
they can close that one and still keep the eastern one, and this bill would not be violated.
Exactly. They ought to make the 50-mile rule there.
Or take Texas. You have one on the east side of Texas and one on the west side of Texas. It takes for a semi-truck a day plus to drive across that state on I-10 because they only can drive for 11 hours before they have to shut down for a 10-hour break. So it would take a day and a little bit for mail to go from the west side of the state to the east side of the state in Texas. Or the same for I-5 in California from the north side to the south side.
We're smarter than you.
This one is actually a little bit better on that than that last one. And it was actually issued by Harriet Hagman out of Wyoming at large. And it is HR 1473, Postal Processing Protection Act, to require the United States Postal Service to apply certain requirements when closing a processing, shipping, delivery, or other facility supporting a post office and for other purposes.
And it's reasonable.
It is. I'm going to say not bad on that one.
Yeah.
Hold on. Somebody actually put some thought into this?
I guess so.
Amazing.
Must be a freshman lawmaker.
Yeah. The next one I want to put out there, this one we don't have to discuss because we've already rallied on it last year and it's been reintroduced. That is HR 1065 and S463, the Protect Our Letter Carriers Act. That is the big one. Here's the next really big one that a lot of RCAs and regular carriers will really appreciate. And that is HR 1522, the Federal Retirement Fairness Act, also known as the Buyback Bill, to amend Title 5 USC to provide that civilian service in a temporary position after December 31, 1988 may be credible service under the federal employee retirement system and for other purposes. You can buy back your non-career time with the Postal Service.
Unless you're on table 2.
No, this covers anybody in a civil service position after December 31st, 1988, which is when they canceled that. So it
Civil
applies to
service.
everybody. Yes, civil
No,
service.
but if you're on table 2, you can't afford to do the buyback. So
That
that's what I'm
well,
saying.
a lot of people on table 1 since Rex came into effect.
Oh yeah.
It has
Now the
its
next,
pros and cons. I'm going to weigh in on this a little bit because,
please do.
I mean, the previous one was subsidized. Subsidizing this would be a financial nightmare. And honestly, and people don't understand how a buyback would work. They're all like, yes, I had 9 years in as an RCA. I want those 9 years to count. It's not going to include a full 9 years. It's going to take the hours that you worked and calculate towards the amount of service, not your yearly amount. So if you were one of those RCAs that first started and you worked 1 day a week, maybe a few days here and there, so maybe you have a total of 6 months that you worked for that year, it's going to calculate the amount of work hours you had and lump those together towards time served, not, oh, you have 9 years. Here's your anniversary date to this date. No, it doesn't work that way. And people don't understand that.
Yeah. So you're looking at the way it would work is the 2080 rule, 2080 hours, because that's full time service. That is what the Retirement Act is based on for checks as well. So every 2080 hours you worked would equal 1 year of retirement or fraction thereof.
Yep.
So you got to remember that as well.
And we all know, I mean, if not within the last 5 years in some areas, but there's still offices that are well staffed, that the job as an RCA is feast or famine. And if you're feasting, great, that's awesome for you. But if you're one of those that is in the famines, you're not going to have as much time being able to credit towards it. I'm just saying, that's something. I mean, yes, it's a great idea having, nearly 9 years myself. And I know those last few years I was working 6 days a week. And so, yeah, I mean, I could see where that is. But if you're one of those that, didn't work as much, it may not benefit you. So it's like I said, there's give or take, there's pros and cons to everything. And people just have to realize it's not going to be you're credited from your hire date to when you went career. It's going to be a calculation of the hours that you work.
And it's also a question of whether they're doing it based on the hours you actually worked or the evaluations of the route that you got paid for and things like that as well. Because subs that worked 1 day a week and worked the heavy Monday and worked 10, 11 hours on a 9-hour route or an 8-hour route, that's another calculation that probably has to be figured out as well.
It's actual worked hours. It doesn't go by your evaluation.
I hope so. Because the post office would probably try to do it that way.
No.
All right. HR 1559. I do not have text on this, but it is called to extend the right of appeal to the Merit Systems Protection Board to certain employees of the United States Postal Service. This one actually affects veterans in the Postal Service, and that is the appeals process involving the MSPB, and that's in discipline, grievances, things like that. So that's something that we should keep an eye on when the text comes out. It was introduced on February 25th, and they still haven't uploaded the text onto the website. This next one is going to get some people riled up, Bill. HR 1560. Postal Supervisors and Managers Fairness Act to modify procedures for negotiating pay and benefits of supervisory and other managerial personnel of the United States Postal Service. So Gerald Connolly of Virginia 11 put this forth. He does have a co-sponsor, Mr. Boast, who is from Illinois 12. They want to try to basically bargain represent for management pace policies, schedules, and fringe benefit programs. So basically, I think it's trying to unionize supervisors and managers through legislation,
Making them bargaining unit employees.
making them collective bargaining agreements between the Postal Service and a bargaining representative organized under Section 1203 that affects any matter. So it would be a separate union for supervisors and postmasters.
I mean, they already have their associations. They're not bargaining, but they are associations.
So they'll become bargaining unit employees of the managers and postmasters or whatever they decide to call the association that wins this lucrative bill.
I'd like to see management file a grievance on upper management for something stupid. That'd be funny.
That'd be entertaining. I'd actually love to sit in on that.
You can't do that. Right? Well, our contract says, yeah, that's why we hollered at you all the time, because you can't do that, because our contract says this. Yeah. Yeah,
And yet, it's reminiscent of the fact that, most of these supervisors and postmasters are in fear for their jobs. So just like the and just like the RCAs are under 90 days, or people that are getting harassed and all that the intimidation factor comes into play for them to consider when they want to file a grievance per se against their supervisors or upper management, their DMs, their POOMs, whatever. This could turn into a Jerry Springer show. I want it.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Could you imagine your postmaster filing a hostile work environment grievance against their POOM or district management?
Oh
that would be epic.
Oh.
That would be funny to the hill. I mean, really. And they come in the next day, and they're all pissed off. So why, my grievance was denied. It's like, get in line, you asswipe. I didn't fill the paperwork in time. They wouldn't give me an extension.
I filed it on day 15. I only had 14 days to file it.
Oh
God!
Gosh. Yeah, that would be ironic.
That's going to be entertaining.
Joking about that one, yeah.
Yeah. All right. The next one is HR 1760 USPS Act to require the Comptroller General of the United States to submit reports to Congress on theft of mail and United States Postal Service property and other civil or criminal violations relating to the Postal Service and for other purposes. It may also be cited as Upholding a Secure Postal System Act.
Oh my God. Let's create another job, another committee, and another subcommittee to do something that we should already be doing currently under the current regime. I mean, James, it's just like, hiding mail when you have routes that are vacated because people calling out or whatever, and they turn around and they just work the parcels and they hide the mail. But yet, you delay, taking out mail or coming back and picking up a tray of DPS that they couldn't find. Oh, holy hell to pay. But management does it all the time. Mm-hmm. My post office was a big violator of that.
So this one is, they shall investigate nationwide patterns and instances of the theft of mail, delays of mail, United States Postal Service employee violations investigated by the Office of the Inspector General of the Postal Service, any other criminal or civil violations under the jurisdiction of the Postal Inspection Service, in the theft or vandalism of Postal Service property and submit a report on each such investigation to the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform of the House of Representatives and the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs of the Senate, the two bodies of the legislature that oversee the Postal Service.
But what are they doing now in general? They are themselves, the Postal Service is delaying the mail themselves.
Yes, but just like other police agencies, we've investigated ourselves and found no wrongdoing.
Yeah.
All right, this is another one that does not have the text yet. It was introduced on March 14th and it still has not been posted yet, but it is to amend Title 18 United States Code to modify the roles and duties of United States Postal Service police officers and for other purposes. It's H.R. 2095. So we do not know what they're modifying, but I'm hoping that what it is they're actually allowing the police officers to go back out and protect mail carriers on their route, especially with all the arrow key thefts and robberies and fatal assaults mail carriers that have happened. I hope that that's what this resolution is for. I will keep an eye on this one for sure, and when I get the text, we'll come back to it.
Okay.
Another one that I do not have the text on, which was introduced the same day, was H.R. 2103 to modify the procedures used by the United States Postal Service for the closure or consolidation of any post office or any processing and distribution center and for other purposes. That's one we're looking at. It's got 4 co-sponsors already, but waiting on the text on that as well. H.R. 2174, Paycheck Protection Act. This one is going to be controversial overall. H.R. 2174, Paycheck Protection Act, to provide that agencies may not deduct labor organization dues from the pay of federal employees, including the United States Postal Service. And this one, you can argue both sides of it, okay? But the thing I see on this is basically they're trying to make the employees have to write a check for their union dues if they're a federal employee or an employee of the Postal Service, versus having it deducted from your paycheck. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I signed my dues deduction paperwork, I knew what I was doing. I knew I was joining the union. I wanted to join the union. And this made it an easy way that I didn't have to remember that I had to send off my dues to the union. I didn't have to worry about the check getting lost in Palmetto or any other facility like Indianapolis or wherever on its way to the union. It was taken care of for me. What do you guys think? It's going to be a hot potato either way.
Yeah, I mean, I could see both sides of it. You really could. But at the same time, I mean, like you said, it's already coming out. That's one less thing I have to remember to send off a payment for.
Well,
And then
let's put it this way.
worrying if a check is going to clear by the time it gets there and they get it in the bank, or, I don't know.
Well, here's the other problem, okay? Because of the delay of the mail process, how would our union, for example, handle all these payments coming in a timely fashion without, some type of grace period for it to arrive? The other problem of this is if they enact this, then you can withdraw the union anytime you want, not sending your payment in.
Yep.
Imagine how many people would bail with that?
Yep.
A lot.
And there are a lot of people that hate the idea that they have to wait until their annual year is up. But that's the other side of it. You would have to send in the check annually as a carrier to the union versus biweekly small amounts taken out of your check. So you would have to save out those small amounts every paycheck in order to reach your annual dues. And I understand people are going to come at me for saying this, but paying your union dues helps protect carriers. There are stewards that protect carriers. There are ADRs and DRs that protect carriers. There are regional reps that protect carriers. There are national officers that protect carriers. The money you put into this union doesn't just pay for fun and games at conventions and conferences and things like that. It pays for the ability to represent the craft in things like arbitration. Arbitration can cost $100,000 in some instances, easily, to protect the carrier. Like the carrier in my office on emergency placement, that may end up going all the way up because of this pod stuff going on across the country. That may go all the way up and may even end up in arbitration. Now that carrier is sitting at home, has been sitting at home for weeks already, and probably will not be back to work for a long time until that's all settled. So I want you to think about those carriers that are getting hurt by these things when you talk about dues and protecting carriers. Because these are your brothers and sisters of the craft that you're protecting with your union dues.
Okay, I don't want you getting mad at me, James, but I'm going to play devil's advocate too. Okay.
Please do. We need that kind of stuff on here.
No, you make a good point in regards to our representation and everything, and the good stewards, the good NROs, ADRs, and DRs. Conversely, we're also paying for the bad stewards, ADRs, DRs, NROs. Point in case, so we had a DR from my area who had failed to process step 2 grievances for over 2 years. Where was the NRO overseeing him? Okay. We had, the ADRs who had pushed them up to the DR. Where were they? We have local stewards who don't know enough about the contract and just give in to management, or they have a personal agenda against that carrier, which you're not supposed to have. Thankfully, we're not paying them. The post office is. But the fact of the matter is that your representation is failing to duly represent you. What about the fact that these people who get into these full-time paid positions aren't required or responsible enough to do the jobs that they were elected to? Or in the case of you're appointed to, exactly. And the thing of it is that, you have a 50-50 balance there. And just like some people have unicorn post offices where the postmaster goes out and carries a route when it's vacant, or, we'll run out, the misthrown parcels and spurs because, everybody's been dismissed for the day and one or two got left behind. You have just as many people, and in my experience with the last SDNC as well as the 26 years at Westchester, that, for the most part, they don't give a shit about the carriers. They worry about getting their Zoom meetings done. They worry about getting their reports done in a timely fashion. They worry about the latest, tirade from a DM or a POOM saying, okay, you're only allowed 3 hours in the office. Okay, you have to do this. You have to. This is the muddle that we're encompassing, is that you have good and bad on both sides. And I'm saying all this because of the fact that if you don't get involved, it'll never get resolved. Nothing will get better unless you get involved. And you have to be in the union to get involved to the point of making significant changes to the entire structure of our national board, our national steward system, and every steward, NRO that's on payroll, because of the fact that, like I said earlier, I'm being prodded to run for our state board, okay? Because people are tired of the politics, and it's so hard to fight that. But if you don't fight it, you'll never win, you'll never gain an inch of ground, and you'll never make an improvement in your work conditions, the environment that you go into and spend a third of your day, every day of your life, that you go in, you spend more time with these people than you do your own family. And if you don't fight for better treatment, if you don't fight for the contract language, if you don't fight for each other, it's not going to get any better, because we have both extremes. We have great carriers, great stewards, great DRs, and some NROs and some people on the national board. But conversely, we run into, the same amount of people who aren't doing their jobs. And I've had it for years, in my position. And you have bad management. And the worst part is they're terrified of losing their jobs, and they kowtow to their superiors.
Mhm.
So, this is the problem. You've got the good and the bad, and there's a middle ground that you got to find. But once you get to that middle ground, you have to keep pushing against the bad, because otherwise it'll just stay there and fester. So get involved. You want something done? Stand up for change. Get involved. Quit crying about it.
So to answer you on your devil's advocate there, wouldn't the failure of those individuals, whether they be local stewards, the local steward one, that is a failure on the representative above them and the carriers in the office for standing up against that? Because the carriers in the office, by a 2/3 vote, can remove their steward if they believe the steward is not representing them. And the representative overseeing them, seeing things like that, could also move to have them decertified as well. It's the same going up the chain. If it's an ADR, the DR has that responsibility. If it's a DR, the NRO has the responsibility. If it's an NRO or an area or the regional, then that's also on the responsibility. The regional is also on the responsibility of the NRO. If it's an NRO, it's the responsibility of the national board. And it all comes to head at the top with the president. He is responsible for everything that happens within this union, as he is the top dog of this union. He is to make sure that this union not only is properly protecting this craft and representing this craft to the best of its ability, but he's also responsible ensuring that everybody is treated with dignity, fairness, and respect throughout the steward system. So
Reserve comment about the president.
So I've only got 4 more bills left. We'll go through them kind of quickly here. This one is one that we need to keep a big eye on for sponsors and stuff like that. Right now, it doesn't have a lot. It only has one co-sponsor, but was introduced on March 18th. It's HR 2193, the FEHB Protection Act. Now, this act, the only thing this act does is it requires anybody with dependents on their health care, and this includes the Postal Service Health Benefit Plan, to send in verification that their dependents actually have the familial relation to them, whether it's a birth certificate or marriage certificate, whatever it is. And if you do not do that within 6 months, they are required to remove that dependent from your health care coverage.
I can see the point of this. I think it's one of those that has its pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I could see why they would do that. I mean, it would be like in a situation like mine, or and I'm gonna just we don't recognize common law in the state of Michigan. But if you think of those areas that have common law, you don't have a legal document between the two of you being married. It's a slippery slope. Or those that, oh yeah, I'll just say that you're my spouse or my child, and I'll put you on my insurance. I mean, I can get it. I see the point of it, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, that's just creating a whole nother fiasco yeah.
And on top of that, my question is, it's a government agency that's running that. Can't the government agency pull up the birth certificates, marriage licenses, and whatever that's filed with the systems already?
I mean, when you have a change of life event, as it is, you have a baby or a legal adoption, or you get married, you have to submit that documentation as it is to add them onto your insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already there.
Yeah. But if it's one of those instances I could see for like open enrollment, new employee, newly career, something of that nature where you don't necessarily have to submit the supporting documentation, I think this is what would just say, hey, you need to send this in as well.
Yeah. So the next one I have is HR 2241. No text on this yet, introduced on March 21st. It's to amend the National Labor Relations Act to ensure the right of employees to a secret ballot election conducted by the National Labor Relations Board. Still trying to figure out why this one's coming out. I mean, I thought secret ballots were the way we were supposed to do the elections.
Yeah, who
Unless you're
knows?
from the states where they tell you who to vote for. Did I say that out loud?
You mean like the NBAs were telling people how to vote on the city carriers TA?
I may have been alluding to that. I'm just, just spitballing. That's all.
And this is another one that I'm trying to figure out what it's pertaining to and what they're actually trying to remove. It came from Ashley Henson out of Iowa 2, HR 2262, to amend the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 to exclude certain activities from hours worked and for other purposes. Trying to figure out what activities they're trying to exclude and if they're actually work related activities that they're trying to exclude that are currently included, like bathroom breaks or something similar to that. Since management likes to think that bathroom breaks are a off the clock activity, I'm still hearing that from carriers to this day. Even though our quick reference guide actually says right there, does not include bathroom.
Yeah, I get such joy out of hearing that one because of the way I was questioned about a bathroom break, and they didn't like the answer I gave them. I mean, I was honest about it, but I was very detail oriented too.
Anything else, James?
So I won't say anything more, Kristen, so you don't have to edit it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, that was all the bills I had for now. There were a couple more that I had included on my post, but I thought those were the most interesting ones to talk about. So I was actually given a document from Wells Fargo on the privatization of the Postal Service. And let's just say they aren't living in reality.
Really?
Let's start with this.
First clue.
The fact that they're turning around and saying that mail and parcels can be split the mail and parcel businesses with the intent of maintaining mail operations as a government enterprise, preserving rural community access and the universal service obligation. Parcel could be carved out and sold or IPO'd. The combination of IPO proceeds and monetization of the real estate portfolio could be used to build out standalone assets for parcel and monetize technology, as well as to subsidize potential mail losses, unlocking $85 billion of real estate. They own 8,500 facilities, of which they believe 7,200 are smaller post office facilities and 1,300 are larger sort facilities. And the Postal Service owns 20,700 acres of land. So it could be $1.2 billion for properties and $34 billion for the land, and better parcel pricing, raising the prices 30 to 140% on parcels. Restructure $400 billion of pension and healthcare liabilities. Move to another entity, likely to the U.S. taxpayer, where they arguably are now, since the buyers or investors would be reluctant to assume such a large legacy liability. No shit, Sherlock. In order to drive efficiency and maximize value, it is likely that employees receive a type of deferred buyout offer to leave, or layoffs could ensue. USPS parcel pricing was 25 to 60% below FedEx UPS, depending on product type. So they'd have to raise it 30 to 140%. The federal government would raise proceeds from buyers or investors. But yeah, I have a 13-page report from Wells Fargo on the privatization of the Postal Service. I will actually put that in our Discord server for people to look at.
Something to read if I have insomnia.
Yes, it'll definitely put you to sleep. But so, what are you guys' thoughts on that document?
I have no thoughts on it.
Well,
I'm kind of gonna take a page out of Corey Walton's book, and I'm not stressing over any of this right now.
No. I think it's a lot of fear mongering. Okay,
It's exactly what it is.
but in regards to the Wells Fargo one, James, I've always had the contention that the post office ought to split its service between the mail and the parcels. And I truly believe that if you have vehicles that can handle the mail, okay, specifically just mail, and then you have other vehicles that can handle the parcels. Yes, there's going to be some overlap, but the parcel aspect of it is going to be skipping, jumping, over 3 or 4 routes, whereas you can now take a route and put anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 addresses on there and just focus on the mail. And that would include, anything that's certified or, registered, express that requires a signature like that, so that, the parcel aspect of it could be more efficient. I still think that's something feasible that they ought to look at.
I can concur with that, but at the same time, for cost efficiency overall and in general with the service, in your rural communities, it's easier to keep the parcels and mail together
Yes.
than it is to send 2 vehicles out to the same areas to deliver. Like I know rural areas that every other house they're delivering a parcel to at the same time that they're delivering the mail. Whereas like in my area, with the size of my area, half the trucks could probably deliver the routes mail and half the trucks could deliver all the parcels. But you're also talking about you're still using the same amount of vehicles to do the same amount of work.
Right, but the efficiency. Let me let me try to put this in perspective to you youngins, okay? Because back in the day when we used to get mail, when you used to come in the morning, and there was 20 plus feet of bundled catalogs, and then 3 or 4 tubs of loose flats, and we used to do that plus anywhere from 9 to 12 trays of DPS. And we were consistently 3 to 5 hours under evaluation because all you did was you hit them mailboxes, bang, 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 no stopping to find this parcel, that package, And this is a formula that you can only use in areas that are concentrated enough in housing density. You can't do it out in Iowa where there's a 120-mile route. It just wouldn't make any sense there to send a vehicle to the end of the route to deliver a parcel that the truck's already going to for mail. But in the suburban and semi-rural areas, such as Westchester, Pennsylvania, it would make great sense. I swear to God, I sit there and I hear somebody go, "Oh, I got 2 box holders and I got 5 trays of DPS." And I'm like, "Shut the hell up!" I used to go out with 15 to 18 trays of flats and letters every day before we had the parcel business. And you know how pissed you would get when you got a parcel? Oh my God!
Because you actually had to get out of the vehicle, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and even
you
better.
mean back when somebody said that they could still deliver box to box like they used to?
Yeah. Or like when they first came out with the barcodes on the scans there, and one of the first barcodes was the EVS barcode, and they were having a fit because first of all, we had a little flip phone that was our transponder for our 14-pound scanner, okay, and I would never scan these EVS packages. And management was having a fit. And then I turned around and showed them the language that says those packages don't require scans. Well, why are we putting the barcodes on there? I said, look, I don't know who the idiot is came up with that. I'm just showing you the language that the post office agreed to. Okay. But, like I said, we would get done by 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and had 600 addresses. A lot of them, and that was the big route in our office, 600. Most of us were in the 400s with the volume of mail we had, and we'd still get back, in time to pick up the kid from daycare or off the school bus drop and all. There is a certain efficiency to just delivering mail. Ask anybody that happens when they turn around and Amazon doesn't show up, and they've got 20 parcels and the rest of it's mail. They're walking out of the office at 1:20, 1:40, saying, "Oh, great. Well, you're going to pay for it the next day."
I like those days.
How much
where
more can the mail
I
buy?
have little
Yeah.
packages and I'm just tossing mail. I miss
Yeah.
those days.
The outputs now. What happens when the mail volume goes down? It's been going down for the last 15 years dramatically. I mean, you're just going to end up turning around and consolidating routes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, right. As the parcels go up, the mail goes down. So one way or the other, you might have to convert a mail route to a parcel route. Same equipment, same driver. Just different function. That's all.
Yeah, and I mean, I actually got to know what it was like to just throw and go with the boxes. I had a day where we were so overloaded that they sent me help, and I just gave them all the parcels, except for one down a back road that I had to go all the way down to their box because they got a hardship. But going along, I did the second half of my route in an hour and a half, which normally takes me 3 hours.
I remember back, when I was still a newer RCA, I was like 6 months in. And the package volume was, this was pre-Amazon days. And I remember it was a bad day anyways. Bad days start with me. I ended up being like a half hour, 40 minutes late coming in. And had a box holder that day. But I had very little packages. I was on a, 47, 48K. I was done at 1:30 that day with a box holder.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you just throw and go, it's nice.
Back when carriers had it good.
Yeah, we had it too good for too. We had it too good for too long, James.
All right, guys, we ready to wind this down?
Sounds like a plan to me.
Alrighty, your final words, James.
It was great to see all the people coming out for all these rallies across this nation. It can't stop. The legislation out there is proving that it can't stop. The stuff going on between the unions and the postmasters general and the contract negotiations, the president, everything that's going on, we need to keep fighting. We need to keep standing up. We need to keep educating ourselves. Because the most important thing is an educated carrier is the bane of management. You have to know more than management does to stay ahead of the game. You have to protect yourself. You have to protect your career, and you have to protect your brothers and sisters of this craft and the other craft. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. Bill?
Oh, you're right. An educated carrier is a dangerous carrier. Westchester specifically, the local carrier brought up the fact that they're putting somebody who's in their third week onto another route to carry because they had 3 call-outs that day. And the carrier, not the steward, stood up to management and says, "No, you can't do that." Well, then the steward got involved. Well, the steward had to look up the information, which was handily provided them by some asshole you all know, not mentioning my name in particular. But the fact of the matter was, by the end of the day, they had it resolved. And they had to redo their schedule because of the contractual grievance. And it's those people who are, my heroes, the ones that stand up for another carrier. They're getting involved. They're not letting the status quo go. And the fact that, Stewart didn't know about it because he's only concerned with issues that are brought to his attention. He's not looking, for any improprieties by management. Well, you have to be alert. You have to be that tactical office and look for those situations that are developing or could develop because management's trying to get over. I don't care who you are. If you see something egregious, if you have a question, challenge it, challenge management, challenge your local steward, and get involved because of the fact that it takes all of us to protect the craft. It's not, you're protecting an individual, but the craft in whole, because that goes a long way of showing people that, you care. It's like being the steward who represents somebody they don't like, or the person they don't like doesn't like them either. It's you have to do your due diligence and protect that individual, protect the craft, and watch out for everybody. Watch out for your fellow brothers and sisters. But the thing of it is that you have to care. You have to put in the time and the effort. You have to put in the due diligence in regards to knowing the contract, the M38, the PO603, the ALM, the F21. I mean, it's a lot. RCAM, Rex. Yes, it is a lot. And that's what we're here for. We're here to help you with these situations and understanding the rules and regulations that might affect your job or just the environment at your job. So, all us Texas, IMS, we're here. I'm averaging about 3 new people a week right now. So, I'm having a good time, responding to them. But the fact of the matter is, you need to address it on the floor as it occurs. Okay, don't let it fester. Don't let it slip by. Address the situation that needs correction. Stand up for yourselves. Stand up for each other. Okay, go out there, have a good week. You've got your mini mail survey is supposed to be by the end of the week here.
Saturday.
You should have your results
Saturday.
And then the following Saturday they go in effect. So make sure you've got your disputes ready and details. You need details. You need facts. Just can't say, "Oh, I'm not getting the right distance." How much distance are you getting? How much distance are you supposed to get? How far is it to the parcel lot? Your hampers inside the office or your bullpen area. You got a question, dispute it, back it up with facts, and make sure each dispute is on a separate form. Yeah, guys, go out there, be safe. Spring's right around the corner for most of us. And, the kids are going to be out there. Be careful watching them around the cars and the cul-de-sacs. I love them little shits, running out in front of you. But, I know you all do a good job and you try to be professional, safe, and efficient. Just make sure, you get home to your loved ones because you are the most important delivery of the day. And that's how you say it, Don. You're the most important delivery of the day. Kristen?
Thank you, guys. Yeah, that's that's like James says, we are all in this together. But, we're not going to have change if we don't all come together to be that change. That means being active. That means supporting those newer RCAs and especially to be active. I have an issue already off the bat. Ruby wants to be active. Let me tell you. She already has a taste of it as going with me this past year. And she's already put her name in for state convention delegate. She'll be on the ballot for national convention delegate. She wants to, and now I'm already getting pushed back by her regular that she'll to the route she's assigned at because he thinks she's gonna run off and party at all these union conventions with me. No, that's not what it is. And talking to other people, we need the next generation to stand up, educate themselves, educate each other, get involved, and be active. We really do. It's, and I hate to say this because, Ruby's had the experiences of going to those things with me. They did turn to her quite a bit at both, the orientation presentation as well a little bit at Academy that they could because she has experienced it. So she was able to tell them what goes on and what the union does and everything else, which I think was awesome. I mean, she had a brand new RCA in her academy from another town that was going to go to one of the rallies today. That's that's what we need out of this next generation coming up. And that's what we need to do to mentor as we go into the future because obviously we don't know what our future is going to hold for us at this present time. Nobody knows. We don't have that little crystal ball or that magic 8 ball to tell us what's going to happen. We don't. So until we know what's going to happen, let's do the best that we can do. Let's provide the service for our customers that they expect. Let's exceed their expectations if we can. And let's mentor our coworkers and our new RCAs and even our current RCAs who don't think it's important. We need to show them why it's important. So on that note, guys, I know it's going to be spring break coming up for several areas. I know in my area and whatnot. So please be vigilant. Like Bill said, the kids are going to be out and around. Be vigilant, stay safe, stay hydrated. It's still March. Weather is whatever it wants to be at this point. 50 degrees one day, snowing the next, back and forth. So stay safe out there, guys, and we'll be back next week.